Big developments on Capitol Hill Wednesday. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke testifying before the House Budget Committee, and Texas Congressman Ron Paul hosting for the first time as chairman of the House Subcommittee overseeing the central bank. Congressman Paul, thank you for joining us. I want to get your thoughts first on the chairman's testimony. He essentially said that QE2 is working, that it's helping to create jobs, but the Fed needs to remain on the same path because we're not quite there yet. What is your response to his testimony?
Well, I would say there's a partial truth to that. He's maintained some jobs on Wall Street, and they're doing pretty well, but it hasn't done anything for Main Street. It hasn't done anything to give us real jobs. It hasn't done anything for people who are losing their houses. So I would think that overall it's a total failure, and we haven't even seen the bad effects from QE2. They're yet to come. Matter of fact, even QE1, those bad effects haven't been fully felt. They're in the mainstream there, and they're going to come out. And one question that came up on my hearings today is where all three of the individuals testifying, I said, what are you going to do to unwind this? Bernanke is so overconfident. I can take care of it. And just like he knew this crisis was coming, and now he can take care of anything. He says, I can take care of any kind of recession because I can print all the money in the world. And he says, don't worry about unwinding. He can take care of it. Don't worry about it. But I'll tell you what, the three individuals we had today, and they were from different spectrums of the political spectrum, and they said they have no idea how to do it, and that it only spells trouble, and none of them were too optimistic that it's going to be removed easily.
Congressman, one of the other things he was confident was that these policies were not triggering inflation. He pointed to the fact that inflation at home is under control. There may be inflation overseas, but those people have their own monetary policies. They should be taking care of that. How did that go over with you?
Well, that subject came up, and I quite frankly have made fun of that because he looks at the CPI and they rig that number, and they like to ignore food and energy. And, few people use food and energy. So therefore, he looks at government statistics which are fudged to reassure him that he doesn't have to do anything. And then when he has to do something, he can't. But he doesn't talk much about commodity prices. They're skyrocketing. Food prices are going up. What about a bond price? He's supposed to give us full employment and stable prices. And we have neither. We have high unemployment and we have very unstable prices. How did the Fed do? This was not all under Bernanke, but under Greenspan. Look at what housing prices did. They skyrocketed and then they crashed. So the last thing in the world they do is give us stable prices. And for him to say that, well, we have no inflation, I think there's plenty, because the real definition of inflation is when they increase the money supply, and the ill effects come later on, and most of the time, unpredictably, it comes with higher prices. So we do have the inflation. The ill effects of higher prices and malinvestment will continue, and we're trying to correct the massive problem we've had this last decade with doing exactly the same thing but more.
Right,
we got into this mess, and
right, so Representative Ryan and some others in Congress are pushing to remove the dual mandate from the Fed so that they would only focus on price stability as opposed to price stability and full employment. It sounds like you don't think that would do the trick.
Oh, no. I mean, I'd vote for it, but what difference would it make? They do what they want. We can't even audit them. We can't find out what they're doing. If they want to lower interest rates because they think that that will, stimulate the economy and do something with prices, that's one thing. But they could lower interest rates for the same thing. Oh, we want to create jobs. For us to say, well, don't mess with jobs anymore, it's not going to change policy at all. They're central economic planners. They've been doing it for years. They've had absolutely no restraints in the last 30 years, and us tinkering with the rules and saying, well, concentrate on this but not on this, but we don't have any right to say anything about your monetary policy, I think that's a dream.
What is on your agenda for overseeing the Fed, and what changes would you like to see?
Yeah, I'd like to see the true audit of the Fed so that we know what we're doing and then talk about reforms. But they shouldn't be fearful, and I don't think they're all that fearful, because I'm not calling for the violent overthrow of the Federal Reserve System. All I'm really wanting to do is expose them to what they've been doing and have a real discussion on monetary policy. But my real reform that I want is competition. They have a cartel. It's a banking monopoly. They want a central economically plan by rigging the interest rates and what the money supply should be. And all I want to do is let the people have a competing currency. Let them have a hard currency. Internationalists have competing currencies all the time. They go in from the yen and the euro and the dollar and the Swiss franc. So there go every place. But in this country, if you start using gold and silver coins as legal tender, you go to jail. So I would say just let competition occur, and if they really mess up, people will go to a good currency. If I'm completely wrong, there would be no harm done. Why should they be so fearful of a little bit of competition? And the goal is not to immediately close down the Fed, but that's what we're going to get. The Fed is going to destroy the dollar. If you look at the dollar of 1913, and now it's worth 2 cents on the dollar of 1913, and they continually debase the currency. They continually believe they can lower the real debt by debasing the currency, and that nominal debt will be much low if you have inflation.
Right,
so they're working very, very hard for inflation.
Congressman, the counterpart to that argument is that in a crisis, the gold standard doesn't do you an awful lot of good. The countries during the Depression that stayed on the gold standard the longest were the ones who had the most difficulty getting out of the ditch and sort of being prepared for what came in the 1930s and 1940s.
Yeah, I don't agree. We'd have to dissect that out. But take 1921. We inflated for the war, and so we had our inflation. The recession, which is a natural correction for that inflation, 1921, it was 1 year, and the GDP went down very sharply. It was a dramatic 1 year depression. It was all over because we went back and remained on the gold standard. But it was exactly because we weren't on the gold standard in the depression, and that we tried to prop up prices and all this mischief and regulations. That's what prolonged it. But it isn't so much that the gold standard can automatically correct all the mistakes. The gold standard keeps you out of trouble. That's the whole thing. You can't inflate and create these artificial bubbles. But no, and once again, I'm saying let the people make a choice. If they like paper money and you want paper money and you want to take care of your kids in 30 years, put your money away in Treasury bills, and earn no interest at all, and see what that'll purchase for you in 30 years. But just think of what would happen if you'd have saved your money in gold for the past 10 years. Gold was $270, now it's $1,350, $1,400. There's strong evidence that if you want to preserve value, you have to have something of sound value. You can't turn it over to the politicians. See, the Fed accommodates the big spenders. They complain about the Congress spending too much money. Well, they do because the Fed accommodates them. Interest rates don't go up because the Fed creates the money. So there's a coalition here. The big government conservatives get together with the big government liberals, and they spend, and deficits run up, and the Fed cries and screams, but then the Fed keeps the interest rates low.
Right,
if they weren't there...
Right, so Chairman Bernanke, today one of the things he also talked about was that Congress needs to do more to get the deficit under control. He said even if economic and financial conditions return to normal, the federal budget will remain on an unsustainable path unless the Congress enacts significant changes in fiscal programs. Is he right about that?
Well, he's deflecting the real problem, and that's the Fed. All he needs to do is quit buying Treasury bills. The interest rates will go up, and the Congress will quit spending. So here he is he's the accommodator, and he's the instigator and promotes this. So I would say that he's part of it, but it's the appetite for big government that is the real problem.
So do you think we'll see an audit of the Fed this year, or at least a bill that gets passed?
No, we got a partial audit last year. We'll follow up on that, and we'll keep plugging away. But we do definitely need more transparency of the Fed, and the Tea Party people who have come agree with that. So we're going to have continued momentum in that direction.
All right, Congressman, thanks very much.